If there was one thing I always thought to myself after seeing Cuphead, is that that game was going to open some doors. Not necessarily in that everyone is going to make a rubber hose animation game, though we've seen people try, but more in that the aesthetic of the early last century would make a fantastic tablet for games to base a theme around. So now, a studio in Brazil is taking a very obvious inspiration from the earliest of sci-fi saucer-era B-movies. Let's see how classic movies and shmup gameplay combines in the demo of Squadron 51. When I saw this run across my Twitter feed, I had to check it out. The 40s, 50s aesthetic seemed on point, with chrome saucers and scaly glass-eyed aliens with human bodies. As such, the entire game is in black and white, coated in a flickering grain filter. Every cutscene in the demo is acted out with real actors and dialogue, though I would probably put on subtitles unless you speak Brazilian Portuguese. The game is, however, rendered in-engine, despite trying to look period-appropriate, especially in the use of chrome shine on the saucers. The fire effects and backgrounds are all very on point and look great, but they look a bit cleaner than you would expect, especially since the game's graphics run at a smooth 60 frames, while the movies seem to run at 30. It's a cleanliness that no amount of screen flicker, film grain, or purposeful animation frame reductions is going to hide. The movie's instant transition into in-game graphics still does seem to work well, though. Of course, the soundtrack is what you would expect to hear. The war and military theme of the game's premise is obviously going to lead into plenty of marches and horns and drums and such, but you're sure as hell going to hear that 50s sci-fi mandated use of a theremin in some of these tracks as well, especially the opening theme. I would showcase what I could here, but the demo's gone now and nobody seems to have listed an OST anywhere, so enjoy the standard backing track noises and dialogue. I'm trying to keep it at a manageable level. Like I'd already said, all dialogue in this game is in Brazilian Portuguese, being worked on by a Brazilian game and movie studio and all. I have no idea if they intend to release the game dubbed in any other language. All other sound, when not constantly being bombarded by the barking orders of your wingmen, is your standard shmup variety, being fairly shots and explosion heavy. Before starting the game, you're tasked to choose from a set of sub-weapons, which are fairly limited in this demo. There's a couple flamethrowers that'll fire in a set direction, and a pack of seeker missiles. Some more of these sub-weapons will get unlocked as you play the demo, and I could expect that there would be a bit more variety to these weapons in the full game. Once you've watched the opening cutscene, which is part 50s invasion movie, and part critique of rampant corporatism, you take on the role of Lieutenant Kaya of Squadron 51, the rebel faction of humans fighting against the alien corporation. Once the transition from Kaya's cockpit to the Gradius-style side-scroller shmup view has happened, the game will start proper. Honestly, though, it's pretty basic in the way that shmups go. Enemies will appear from all sides of the screen in random formations, and will either need to be shot down, avoided, or have their shots evaded. In fact, a lot of the patterns are pretty basic and pedestrian for a shooter. Many of the saucers will just tend to awkwardly bob up and down in a small sine wave, moving right to left. Other ships with different attacks and formation patterns will appear, but the demo doesn't seem to offer up too much in the way of variety. The large tech orb enemies are the most interesting in both their look and attack, but aesthetically, the enemies at least will all fit the theme. One extremely clever and useful means of combining the movie aesthetic and gameplay is when enemies are about to spawn in from off-screen, you'll see white ovals, known to movie buffs as Q marks or cigarette burns. Traditionally, they're used to showcase to projectionists when to change the reel. It's a stupidly clever way to warn against the shmup issue of having enemies appear without proper warning, by tying it together with the medium that it's inspired from. However, like most Q marks themselves, they tend to be a very blink-and-you'll-miss-it kind of warning. There aren't as many movie scenes as I thought there'd be either. I mean, sure it's a demo right now, but despite there being 3 distinct and fairly long gameplay chapters, each ending in a scoring system, which seems to be based around how much damage you've taken during the stage and how many enemies you've shot down, only the first chapter is given any kind of movie production scenes beforehand. They set up the story, and that's it. Every other bit of the story is told via dialogue through the stages during gameplay, so here's hoping that some of this blend of cinema and games will actually remember to put in the cinema portion. It is a demo, of course, but maybe it's something that'll be left to every few chapters and hopefully not just the opening and the ending. While the game's style is definitely at the forefront, the demo's 3 levels were hopefully just a taste, as the variety of enemies and lack of movie scenes felt that there wouldn't be much more beyond that. There's no real bosses, unless you count a tower that you have to take a few flyby passes to defeat. It is looking to drop sometime this year, so I'll keep an eye on it and hope it has more to offer than its aesthetic, as solid as that aesthetic is.